We'll be there. Ken Jacobson, myself, and Pierre Pizzoli, and our greenhouses that all share a wall. We'll be having an open house. You know, a lot of us. These are the three main breeders of the San Francisco area. So if you want to come by, that's Sunday the 16th from 9 to 2. Please coordinate with me if you want to come visit. We will get you the information.
Thanks, Mitch. All right, then we have new members, and I see some of them in the room today, and well, Lori's come back. I know Lori from a few years ago, helped us at KE. And then Beth, Ann, and Russell, I don't know if you're online or here, you're here, welcome. AOS judging, it's the usual, as the dates have been updated, so we have judging tonight at the meeting, and then mid-month we have Pacific Central judging at Filoli, and Sierra Nevada is in Sacramento tomorrow. There are still chances to sign up this week, April 6th, Thursday through May 4th. Tom Perley's teaching a growing orchids class from 10:30 to 1 p.m. on Thursdays. At City College, I think it's like $200. And the AOS spring meeting is happening in San Diego, April 19th through the 22nd. We are skipping our board meeting this month because several of us are traveling, and so there won't be one this month, or show committee. They're not going to be until May. So we're going to have the May 8th meeting is also where we have elections, and I have a moment to say that. I mean, the May 2nd meeting. We also just confirmed the speaker is going to be David Edgley, speaking about novelty phalaenopsis. He's flying in from Seattle for this talk, and he's also going to, we're going to share the cost of travel with Sacramento, who's going to co-host the next night there when they have their meetings. I think Don is in the room. I saw you somewhere, right behind me. So Don's coordinated and offered to host with Dave Hermeyer. They're going to share their greenhouses at their homes on May 13th. So mark your calendar. We have another meeting before that, so we'll find out about it. But from 10 to 2, it'll be kind of an open house, and you can carpool and go see their places. And I think you might be selling. And then Orchids in the Park planning is away. It's the last weekend in July, just Saturday and Sunday, and the next show committee meeting will be on May 8th. I'm flashing this up officially. We are required to notify everyone of the slate of officers. We just finalized it right before the last couple of days of today's meeting. And I want to introduce some of the people that you may not have met that are actually here in the room, because several are new members. So I'm stepping down after 5 years. I'm turned out by the bylaws, as is Faye, who's our treasurer. Faye is going to take over as president. She's willing to have someone else take it if they want it, but otherwise she has stepped up to be the next president.
No choice.
So thank you, Faye.
Somebody else will step up, but otherwise, if not, then no choice.
Thank you, Faye. Mitch has stepped up, and I think everyone's met Mitch over the last several months. Mitch is going to be our vice president, taking over from Adam. Thank you, Mitch. Eugen is taking over as treasurer.
This is a slate.
This is the slate of officers. Right. We haven't voted on this. This is the proposed slate of officers. Obviously, at the actual May meeting, you can still make nominations yourself or others, but we want to go through and just announce the slate, and it'll be published. It's on the website. It'll be in the newsletter. Harm. Kuchenhoven. I always, did I say it right?
Yes.
There you are. So, Harm has volunteered to be secretary and show chair. So I'm gonna help her. So thank you, Carm. And Dave's going to continue on the board instead of as past president as a regular elected board member. Jeff and Stuart are going to continue, and Heidi not only is our fearless membership chair, but she's also stepped up to be the other board member. So if others want to be on the board in an officer role or any other role, let us know, and right up until the May 8th meeting. And I think Adam is going to be back and run the election. And then I mentioned Carm. Other person I want to recognize is Rhiannon, who's a new member, who's also volunteered to take over the newsletter editor role from Eugen, because she's stepping down as newsletter editor and over into treasurer. And then Derek, also a new member you might have met at the check-in desk, he's going to co-chair membership with Heidi. And I'll continue on as past president. So a lot of juggling, but it finally fell into place. So thanks everyone. We couldn't do it without everyone. It takes a village, so thank you. Orchid Digest, we've been putting this up trying to help increase their membership, to help them with their costs to continue to operate. So please consider joining Orchid Digest, or at least trying it out. You can get free issues. We're not going to do show and tell yet until after the speaker. And then any other announcements before we introduce Gloria? All right. Quiet group. So, do you want to do the intros?
Yeah.
All right.
So tonight we have Gloria Justen, one of our members here. So a local person that many of you met, but she's going to be speaking tonight on sustainable growing of orchids. As we all know, with California, the water and energy crisis especially hits our state particularly hard. So I think we'll have a great speaker tonight talking about ways that we can more sustainably grow our orchids and techniques that may improve it. So I think we should all give Gloria a big round of applause, and we'll have a good speaker tonight. As I try to tackle the crowd, I'm not trying to break the speaker. I'm trying to break up on you.
Okay, let me get your slides up. One second.
I'm just gonna get a couple little things out that are part of my presentation.
All right, so.
Where's the best place for you to speak?
Actually, where the owl,
You need to speak to the owl, so get close to the
yeah,
owl.
that's the microphone. So,
Okay.
so it can find you from here. Can folks online hear Gloria? Go ahead.
Hello, everybody online and everybody in the room.
Okay, good.
Okay, so actually I need to be able to control. Can you space this for me? It's the first time I've ever doing something like this. So my theme is caring for orchids, caring for the web of life, and exploring possibilities for sustainable growing of our orchids. And so growing orchids, it seems harmless enough, right? We're growing plants, we think they're so beautiful, we love them, but there might be a few things that would bring up some questions and about how we might be able to do better. I don't come to tonight as an expert. I'm actually a musician and an artist, but I'm a concerned citizen, and I've been doing some deep diving into the rabbit holes of research. And you know how that can go, and the holes get deeper and deeper and deeper. There's so much information actually that I have really more questions than answers. So the subject is so vast, I'm gonna have to kind of do an overview, but I'm going to also kind of dive deeper into a few subjects that are my pet subjects maybe, and things that relate more to orchid growing. So, let's see if I can, okay. So some of the topics I'm going to address or touch upon: water collection and strategies for working with water, renewable energy, reusing and recycling, a little bit about composting, questions about growing media and what might be the carbon footprint, integrated pest management, and a little bit of history, and touching upon sourcing plants responsibly. So some things I'm going to mention as an overview since they're more general, and other things will go into a little more detail. I would like to sincerely thank the people that took the time to speak with me and let me interview them. Dave Hermeyer and his partner Sam, Kristen Natoli from the SF Conservatory of Flowers, Mitch Schneider, whom I interviewed at his greenhouse, my friend Melanie Yelton, who is a plant scientist, Maria Trefen from Recology, and Alfred Hoppenmeyer. So, next one. The next one. There we go. So unless you live underground, like the rare orchid Rhizanthella johnstonii, it lives most of its life underground, you might have heard that there are some very bad things going on in the environment. So, and you might be thinking maybe there might be ways you could be responsible for that. And, you know, have you ever felt like guilty about things or anxious about how the way things are going, or even felt grief about it?
Too dark?
No,
I think it's good.
It's in the green.
Much for us, huh?
Yeah, I mean, I think we all maybe feel these things sometimes when we hear all the bad news about things going on in the environment. But, you know, we're not individually responsible for all the things. We have many opportunities to become more aware of, you know, opportunities and even to really enjoy being part of it all. So this is artwork I found online. It seems to represent the web of life to me. We can't always see where everything's from. We can't always see what it will become. Where it will go, we don't consciously know, but we are always part of the flow. Can we see better where everything's from? Can we look closer at what it becomes? Where does it go? We endeavor to know, since we are eternally part of the flow. So speaking of flow, still with some H2O. I have a little video. So actually, let's skip something. Yeah, skip. Starting with the subject of water. This year we're having crazy amounts of rain, and it's so welcome. We're just, it has caused flooding for some people, and who knows what's going to happen when the snow melts. But yeah, so it seems like we're out of the drought for now. But we know that a lot of years drought is actually a serious issue, and the drought will come back. So we are dependent on the Hetch-Hetchy system here in San Francisco, or if you live in the Presidio, you actually get your water from Lobos Creek. But if that system stops working for some reason, we might find ourselves up a dry creek. And what if there's a problem like an earthquake? Do you have enough water stored up for you and your plants? Who dies of thirst first? Your partner or your masturbalia? So yeah, in some desert areas, it's common for people to collect rainwater. And when it makes sense for all of us to collect water, when it's free water from the atmosphere, and it's often better for our plants, unless it's acid rain, which I'm not going to get into. So a little video here from Alfred Hockenmeyer in Southern California, who's going to show us his. Can you hear this?
You need to share the audio as well.
Oh yeah, okay, I'm going to pause this. Okay. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing. Oops. Oh, it's still playing.
Maybe I should have.
Here, using gravity, the first thing it encounters is the filtration system. There's a two-part. The first part is the leaf eater. As you can see, there's a screen, a mesh. This is your first line of defense to get out the biggest particles. Tank. So this pops off real easy to clean. I could pop it off and clean it and then put it back on top. So that's the leaf feeder. And then the second, this T structure here is actually my first flush. So the dirtiest part of the water will go down in this tube, fill it up. There's a ball, a plastic ball in here that will float to the top and then seal it off. And then the water will flow back into the orange intake into my tanks. So this is a very efficient way to keep your rainwater clean, and of course it also requires you to monitor it both before, during, and after a storm, because this will clog easily, and if this builds up and if the leaf hangs over, then the water is going to dribble down the front and not go into your tanks. So here's the first of my tanks, and they're all connected at the base here, again with the tube, so they all fill up at the same time. This is my exterior pump. It's a really snazzy Grundfos pump that is tied into, you can see here, like a hose bib. So I just open this up and then turn that pump on, and I can use that to water the garden and see with the hose, do an extension. I can use it to water my orchids. And then over here, this is my level indicator. So it's always nice to know, gee, how full are your tanks? Of course, now they're totally full because we've had so much rain, but there's a string here, right? And then there's a counter ball on the inside, and that gives exact measurement so you can see where your level is. And then over here, the last tank, we have the green is the overflow. You must have an overflow because at some point, you're going to fill up your tanks and that water's got to go somewhere. So it's going into the overflow down there and then into, I have made a little river that will drain down the side of the property and also infiltrate into the garden as well. So the overall concept is to try to keep as much of this rainwater on site to reduce the runoff, to reduce the pollution runoff, because as that filters into the garden, it will be filtered out, the pollutants, and then of course to recharge the water table. And you notice too, it's very wet in here. I just watered with my rainwater.
Yeah, so Alfred has a couple of greenhouses. He has a lot of awarded plants and a beautiful garden. Unfortunately, there's not time to show his whole video of his greenhouses, but maybe I can create one, because he made a really nice 8-minute video of that. So,
Hello.
wait, stop. Okay. Next one. This is very slow to go to the
And
next
this
slide.
aside, Alfred invited us to come tour his place, so Joe and I stopped by, and we were in LA, like Thanksgiving or Christmas time or something, and then they came up with PLE. So I refer to Gloria because she's for people that do different kinds of
Yeah. Our own Dave Hermeyer gave me a tour of his.
So you say you use your water from your fish pond as fertilizer?
Yeah, we change out part of the pond water periodically, and since there's a lot of goldfish in the pond, we can use the nutrients from the fish poop for watering plants in the garden.
That's brilliant. What a great way to keep things going in the full cycle.
Yeah.
It's really pretty too.
If you couldn't really hear that, he's saying he uses the water from his fish pond, he cleans it out, and the fish poop serves as fertilizer for his garden. I'm not really sure if he uses that with his orchids, but here we have a large-scale orchid grower, growing like Phalaenopsis for the big, supermarkets and stuff like that. These people really pride themselves on sustainability, so I think their vision is inspiring, even if it's not something that we can duplicate, on our small scales, but still, I think their dedication is admirable, and we might be able to implement similar things on a smaller scale. Like, for example, on their website, they say that all the rainwater caught on their 350,000 square foot roof is collected, cleaned, and then used for irrigation of their orchids. This reduces their demand on the public water system to zero. Rainwater that falls on their roof is stored in large silos for future usage. On-site stormwater ponds ensure that overflow is controlled and the pressure on public stormwater system is minimized. The plants absorb only about 50% of the water that they're given, and the other 50% is actually collected and reused. So by collecting their irrigation water, they also reuse fertilizers. Fertilizers are also prevented from seeping into groundwater or entering the public water system. So this is actually something we can do on a small scale, which I'm going to get into shortly. Of course, frankly, rainwater collection isn't always possible in the city. Like if you live in a 600 square foot apartment on the 3rd floor, you might not be able to have silos of water and channel it off your roof and all that, obviously, right? So, but there might be something more modest you could do. And, it could be saving the water from washing your vegetables and putting it in a bucket to use with your orchids later. That's something I often do, and it's very easy to do. Otherwise, this water is just flowing. I mean, of course, water is just going into the cycle. It's not harming the water to flow through, but there's so much energy that goes into channeling the water into our Hetchy water system, and so it's more about that, like the availability of the fresh water that we can value. So what about even reusing your shower or bath water? I don't always do that, but sometimes I do it. I'll take buckets from my shower water, it doesn't have much soap in it or anything, and carry it back to my plant area and keep it in a few large buckets and then use it for my plants. You can even do that if you take an Epsom salt bath, because actually plants like the magnesium that is the Epsom salt. Okay, so let's see. Next video, let's see. Yeah, so something simple to do, collecting. So you can actually use hydrogen peroxide if you feel the need to disinfect your water, if you're concerned about spreading pathogens between your plants and stuff like that. So I interviewed my friend Melanie, who is a plant scientist and agricultural researcher, and we talked about issues with chlorine and hydrogen peroxide, chemistry and stuff. So it's like this.
With orchids, a lot of the time, the mix is very loose. So a lot of the water that comes through is probably the same as went in, because it just flowed straight through, and that's what you want with most orchids. Well, a lot of orchids. It depends on whether they're terrestrial or epiphytic. But, so yeah, it seems like a lot of the water would be able to be reused as is, and sometimes I do that. But of course, then if you're worried about transmission of diseases between plants, you might want to disinfect the water in some way.
Which you could do with hydrogen peroxide and let it dissipate if you want to.
Yeah, that's a great idea. That would be easy.
So,
Like blood precaution.
What was that?
And how long did it dissipate?
Not long. It actually breaks down quite quickly. And actually, she also mentioned about hydrogen peroxide. It doesn't store long, and especially if it's in like light or heat, it doesn't retain its efficacy. Here's another thing that's not directly related to sustainability, but it's just a fact I learned from the San Francisco Water Company. They do use chloramine to sanitize the water. And we have to have that because otherwise you can have waterborne diseases like, cholera and stuff that have now been pretty much eliminated because of the water being cleaner. But chloramine, it doesn't dissipate as fast as some other things like chlorine itself. Chloramine is actually a combo of chlorine and ammonia. However, it can be actually neutralized by citric acid or vitamin C. And if you take vitamin C, you know, like a 1,000 milligram capsule isn't really that much. You can take many of them in a day, actually. And 1,000 milligram capsule of vitamin C will neutralize, an average bathtub worth of water, which could be like 15 gallons or so. So actually, often what I do, since I don't like the smell of chloramine, and actually it's not the greatest for your plants either. It can be irritating. I know it can be irritating to my lungs and to skin too. So a lot of people are very against the use of chlorine. However, it's easy to neutralize it with, like, if you have citrus fruits and you squeeze them and then you have the rind with a bunch of juice still in there, you can actually just put it in your water and it will do a chemical reaction to neutralize the chloramine. So I was really happy to learn that, actually. It's super simple. You don't need like some special machine or, anything expensive. So, So moving on to energy. So, yeah, it takes a lot of energy to recreate a habitat of a plant that's not what you have, just natively, right? So in the Bay Area, we have conditions where we can actually grow quite a few orchids outside, but still people have a lot of greenhouses and, controlled conditions. So that requires energy to produce heat, light, and more humidity. So, since we all are hearing constantly about the detrimental effects of using petroleum sources of energy, what are some people doing to incorporate more renewable energy? And here's a little video from our Rich Schneider, and he's going to talk a little bit about what he's doing in his greenhouse.
So I try to run everything off a solar panel. That's why I also am investing, I don't have it here yet, but I'm actually investing in a passive heating system. The fan is solar paneled. There. Fan is solar paneled from a 2 foot by 4 foot solar panel that I have outside.
So there is the solar panel, and he's planning on adding on to his system with a passive heating system as well. He also mentioned to me his solar panel is at a 45-degree angle, which is what we need at our latitude. So Dave Hermeyer and his partner Sam also mentioned that they have signed up for a program to install solar on their roof. As for me, my husband Greg and I live in a rented apartment on the 3rd floor. We can't install roof solar panels, but we do subscribe to PG&E's solar program, in which we pay a little bit more each month to support the solar grid. So I think that you can still sign up for that. And Greg put it out the other night though. It's not like we have separate wires coming into our house where we only get the power from the solar grid. I mean, that is a fantasy, right? Because all the power is still mixed. It's just that we are paying a little bit to support the solar grid, and that feels good. So, it's just a little thing that we can do to feel like we're supporting something renewable. Yeah.
San Francisco Public Utilities sponsored free power, whatever they call it.
Uh-huh.
And if you subscribe to that, which does cost more, it has nothing to do with PG&E, but they just distribute it.
Okay.
But you're getting green source energy if you subscribe to that program.
Yeah. I think it's through, we pay our bills through PG&E though, so.
PG&E collects all the money this work.
I mean, yeah, okay. So maybe you have it right about that. So yeah. So this is one of my plant shelves. I was just showing I have LED shelf lights that I'm using for my plants, and they're from Costco. They're made by FITE, company FEIT. And the cool thing about these lights, first of all, LED lights use a lot less energy than old school plant lights. like metal halide lights. I used to have those, one of those 20 years ago. And it just used up crazy amounts of energy. But LED lights run really cool and they don't take so much energy. And these particular ones, I can control the color spectrum and dim it or intensify it with an app and put the schedule on it too. So, and they're half the price of the ones that are sold as plant lights, which you can't control the intensity or the color spectrum. So anyway, my plants are doing well. I have a couple different LED types going, but mostly these Costco shop lights, which I think they're really good. Here's a view. It's one of my shelves. I have a lot of small plants, and then I have another shelf actually also in that room. Okay, so who do we have next? Okay. So just to mention, Westerley Orchids, which is another company that produces Phalaenopsis for the mass market. They're another really sustainable company. And again, maybe we as small growers and people that are interested in more unusual species, we can turn up our noses at the Trader Joe's orchids sometimes. But yet again, some of these companies have really pioneered sustainable energy and ways of growing the plants that's very earth conscious. So I think it's really great. They have computerized climate control systems, and they even capture waste exhaust from their boilers, cool it, and re-inject it back into their greenhouses as pure CO2, which actually helps them photosynthesize better and restore, store more carbon back into themselves. That's really fancy and is beyond what most of us could do. But maybe we can still be inspired by their commitment. One simple thing we could do to save energy would be to grow orchids that easily adjust to our own climate. So for example, growing cloud forest orchids works well in the cooler, foggier parts of the Bay Area. So a lot of people grow mastifolias and Draculas, and this really prosper around here. If I lived in warm and sunny Mission District or in Oakland, I might grow more warmer growing orchids. So that would definitely save me energy and stress of trying to provide the right conditions for my plants. So if you have too much heat, shade structures and shade cloth can really help. So yeah, we have, this is Dave Permeyer's
Beautiful lettuce plants.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, and tomatoes are really coming along.
Goodness, flowers.
These are the tomatoes that are going to shade your orchids in the summer, right?
Yeah, the tomatoes get up to almost the ceiling, and so they make some shade for the orchids.
That's such a great idea.
And I didn't really intend it, but I discovered that the tomatoes use a fair amount of water, and so the evaporation from the plants adds to the humidity in here.
That's a really great benefit as well.
Yeah,
Plus you get tasty tomatoes, right?
they're wonderful tomatoes.
Yeah, so his tomatoes grow high. This is what they look like when they grow higher in the summertime, and then they provide shade for the orchids. So I think that's a really great idea. It's very organic and living wall of edible fruit-producing plants. I just like it. It's very satisfying to see because, creating like the jungle environment in a way that's leafy filters for the orchids that grow in, rainforest areas anyway. That's just a nice picture of Dave and Sam in their beautiful garden. Okay, so we're going to move on to reusing and recycling and composting. So wouldn't it be great if we could all go down to the nursery with our handmade sustainable wood boxes and pick up the plants of our choice and in compostable containers and come home and replant the plant in our hand-thrown pottery and then reuse our sustainable wood basket again. That would feel good, right? But it's so beyond our, what's happening right now. So instead, you probably have a stack of plastic. I have a better stack of my own. You guys can't find anything else. Plastic pots. How many do you have? 10, 15, 20, 200. So there's good news and bad news. The bad news is that plastic does not decompose for thousands of years. The good news is that plastic doesn't decompose for thousands of years, so you can keep reusing it over and over, and it'll probably outlive you by a long time. So, you know, reusing is like the first step of sustainability, really, if we can reuse something. I was curious about whether plant pots actually get recycled in the Bay Area. So I emailed Recology to ask them, because on their website it looks like they pick up everything, right? And I was just curious, like, what really happens. One email, the person very glibly said, yes, we do. But a few days later, I got a phone call from Maria Treffen at Waste Zero, which is a division of Recology. And she took the time to talk with me for like a half hour on the phone. She's super passionate about recycling and composting. This is a picture of her found online. She's been working in this field for 15 years, and she obviously knows a lot about the subject. She was really happy I'd be sharing with you some info that she passed on to me. So again, there's good news and bad news, right? We live in California, which has a lot of the best environmental protection laws. And we live in the Bay Area, in San Francisco, which is so progressive, and I'm really grateful to live here. We're supposedly at the forefront of recycling. People even come to San Francisco to see how we do it, you know, even go to tours of Recology and so forth. The bad news, however, is, the truth is that most of the plastic that goes in the bins ends up in the landfill. You know, they collect all the different numbers of plastic. However, most of it does not get recycled. So you probably already understand that Recology is not the company that actually does the recycling, right? Recology, with its trucks, picks up the recycling materials, all the discarded materials, takes it to their processing facilities, separates it by machines and by hand on conveyor belts. And this is a picture actually of the inside of their facility. They sort it, they bale it, and then they wait for a manufacturing company to buy it from them, who will turn it into a new product. If nobody buys it, it goes to the landfill. And China is not taking our recycling anymore, ever since 2018. So we've had too much, right? And no one wants black plastic. The only things that are getting recycled are clean, dry, non-food tainted, clear or white, rigid plastic items. So like drink bottles maybe, or a hard plastic milk bottle, clear or white, and nothing that is a little bit soft and mushy. Yeah. Everything else sits in a bundle on a loading dock until when no one buys it and it's trucked off to the landfill. So, yeah. So this means for us, as plant lovers, right, these black plastic pots and most other colors of plastic pots, they do not ever get recycled. They just become trash. So, and especially if you put dirty pots into the recycling bin without cleaning them, the dirt contaminates other items which might actually be recyclable otherwise. So, and it gets in the machine, the sorting machines, and causes damage. So it would be better if you're gonna throw it away, put it in the landfill bin, especially if it's dirty. So anyway, this can be a very depressing topic, because we know, we're just producing more and more plastic, and oh my God, we're just swimming in this stuff. So anyway, this is a type of mushroom that actually eats plastic. So I'm just praying that Paul Stamets is going to make it available to us all sometime soon, so we can cheer them on as they eat the plastic and hopefully don't become what they need. I guess they break it down into its components and it can return to the earth.
Is the mushroom edible?
I would not eat that mushroom after it eats a bunch of plastic.
That's what I wanted to know.
Actually, it neutralizes it so that
What do they say? All mushrooms are edible once.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, the mushroom isn't really absorbing it exactly, it's breaking it down. I don't know, actually, I don't know the chemistry, so I shouldn't speak about that. But there are, actually, microremediation is a really great hope of environmentalism. I mean,
and microbiology.
yes, microbes too, there are types of bacteria that eat plastic and oil and all the other things. I mean, essentially, petroleum is of the earth too, right? It all comes from the earth. Everything, it was alive once, right? It can return to the earth. It's just that we have put it in all these different forms of resins that actually, and that's another problem too, why it doesn't get recycled, because there are so many different kinds of plastic resins and they cannot be mixed together because they melt at different temperatures. So anyway, we've gotten ourselves into a bit of a pickle here. Anyway, is this really the way we want our world to be? Obviously no. So how can we reuse these items? You know, we all love the earth. We're gardeners, we're plant lovers, we you know, and also we're not to blame for all the plastic, and there's so much other plastic in our lives. But if we're cultivating our plants and we're like trying to connect with the earth, and then we find out, oh, this plastic is just like a, you know, it's a waste product and it's not going to the earth and it's just like causing all these mounds of trash. It just becomes so burdensome. So how can we reuse these things? So anyway, I was thinking of some stuff here that we need to move on. Anyway, let me see, I'm gonna move on. Dirty plastic, this is my dirty plastic that I'm getting around to scrubbing. But here is a Costco chicken container. It has baby dendrobiums in it. So, you know, it can be a terrarium, right? We can reuse these things and be creative. Here are Dave and Sam's little nursery plastic things. It used to be Trader Joe's cookie boxes. And here are Mitch's crates that he's using to hold up his tables. All of his tables in his greenhouse are held up by these stacks of crates. So yeah, this black plastic is going to be around a long time. Might as well make use of it structurally. This is a little video made a couple years ago for Earth Day. Share with you.
Happy Earth Day, everybody. I wanted to share a tip for how to reuse a common household item, which is the plastic jar lid. They work great as saucers for indoor plants. And so now I always save these jar lids, especially the black ones or green ones. Sometimes they're red, but they're less attractive a color, I think. But for my plants, I use the lids so that, of course, we have to have drainage holes in our plant pots. And then this is a convenient and free way to have a saucer. So, and then you recycle the containers. Please do recycle all the containers that you possibly can, so we can have more sustainability and less waste. So, happy gardening.
Okay, so yeah. All right, I'm gonna skip this video because it's kind of rehashing some same territory. But that was before I found out a lot of it doesn't get recycled. But that clear plastic, okay, that has a good chance.
Because hydrogen peroxide doesn't pose a lot of the same dangers as the bleach does, it seems.
So I'm going to go on. Shake excess dirt or used bark out of the pots into the compost. Let them soak in a bucket with some dish soap. And then to disinfect them, you can use 5-SAN, hydrogen peroxide, or a 10% bleach is actually good enough. Some people who are much more paranoid use 20%, but actually 10% bleach is plenty. And then you can let the bleach evaporate. Or my friend Melanie pointed out that UV rays from the sun also kill everything. So it's a free and cheap and easy way. After you scrub your pots clean, you can actually just put them out in the light. Not inside, because that will block the UV rays, But outside, even on a foggy day, you get enough UV light to kill microorganisms. Okay, so I'm gonna move on to one of my newest interests. Potting media for orchids. So I really have more questions than answers about this subject because I just got to thinking, why are we buying all our potting media from New Zealand?
That's what I'm saying.
Right, I mean, it has to be, they've convinced all of us that they are the best and only source for, bark, sphagnum moss, and tree fruit, okay? So, does this make sense? The carbon footprint of shipping all this stuff, 6,700 miles from New Zealand to San Francisco. I mean, think about it, right? Or you can import it from Chile, your moss, if you use moss. That's also 6,000 miles away if it comes from the northern part of Chile, but if it comes from the southern part, which I think the moss collecting does, you add another 1,400 miles to the trip. I mean, yes, I love orchiata bark, it's very nice, right? I do like it, right? It's very functional and
trees.
but yeah, I understand why people like it, but yeah, we have trees here, right? We have trees in California, and in fact, they're using our trees over there. The Monterey pines, they have basically, when the European colonists got to New Zealand, they cut down all the native forests and built their homes, and then later planted this Monterey pine, Pinus radiata, which originates in California. And now they have a lot more of them than we do. So actually, it is kind of a problem over there too, because it has crowded out their native species over there. So, but they've also done a lot of breeding of it, selecting. So, they've gotten very high tech with forestry in that way. But of course, the forests of radiata pine that are like plantation forests, they don't have biodiversity. They're just, carbon copy clones of trees. Anyway, so can we possibly look for sources of bark? I have actually been looking, and there are lumber mills in California and also in other parts of the United States that offer bark. So I'm looking into it. I'm going to let you know what I find out. Yes?
There's actually a local company that picks up all the fallen trees and turns them into furniture. So maybe.
Do you know the name of the company?
There's one in Alameda for sure, but I haven't actually gotten around to looking them up because I have actually been debating on giving them a call.
Yeah.
What about orchid bark?
Yeah, I've been thinking also maybe there are arborists in town who would have branches that they want to get rid of that maybe we could use for mounting orchids. Can you please state your question if it's, speak up real.
I actually know of one if you want to get connected.
Awesome. Yeah. That's great, thank you.
Yeah.
Tell me later. Yeah. Okay, so, yeah. Interestingly enough, one of the big orchid growers that I mentioned earlier, Cosmic Plants, who are in Ontario, they only use North American pine bark for their huge Phalaenopsis operation. So, yeah, their pine bark is a byproduct from the North American lumber and construction industry. So, yeah. We've all, we enjoy convenience, right? So it's like these things that have become convenient we're using. But, yeah, I'm just posing a lot of questions there. I don't have all the answers, obviously, but I just encourage everybody to question and look for alternatives here. There's also the subject of sphagnum moss, right? I mean, for a lot of my plants, I don't like to use sphagnum moss, but some of them it's good for, ones that like to stay moist a lot. But in doing this research, I just came to appreciate a lot more. This is Pinus radiata bark. Okay, so here's a sphagnum moss bog. And so sphagnum is a type of, there are many species of sphagnum. First of all, there are like hundreds of different species. of sphagnum. It's a beautiful plant in itself, and it grows in these wetlands. What they do when they harvest, a lot of times when they harvest sphagnum and peat moss, which is the dead part that's underneath this bog, there are just layers and layers of dead vegetation that doesn't completely decompose because it's acidic and underwater all the time. So that actually becomes the peat, right, that they later mine and sell to garden centers all over the country. Most of ours comes from Canada, like peat moss in the garden center, right? But this sphagnum moss that's harvested from the top layer, it's harvested in various ways. Anyway, before I do that, I'm just going to show a few quick pictures of some bog plants. These are sundews, carnivorous plants. There are a lot of carnivorous plants that live in bogs because actually there are not as many nutrients in the bog in their root area. So these plants have evolved to get nutrients from the insects that they capture. So Cypripedium. I'm going to move quickly, and unfortunately I didn't write down the names with these photos, so I'm going to have to be lame and not tell you what the names are. But these are all different kinds of orchids that grow in wetland areas. Yeah. Yell it out if you know the name. These are habenaria. So here is somebody harvesting sphagnum by hand. So there are places where they're harvesting sphagnum in like small enterprises on private land, and they'll just basically just pick it up in bunches off the ground, and oftentimes it's very heavy because it's all wet. They'll take it in helicopters to their drying area where they lay it out in the sun to die and dry and ship it off. Sometimes they actually use heaters to, you know, like oil-based or coal-based heaters to cook it dry. But this is like a massive operation, right, where they're harvesting a lot of sphagnum. You know, and they say it's sustainable, but I question this, really, because it's no longer a living ecosystem. It's just, you know, it's a farm, right? But you can see what the ecosystem used to look like and how beautiful that wetland is and how many different species and complex interactions are going on in the life forms there. Whereas this is like a barren thing that they just break up all the moss. Okay, and yeah. So, you know, some operations are more sustainable than others. Some of them do let the sphagnum grow back and then they'll, you know, wait a few years before they harvest it again and all that. But in order to harvest, just, you know, FYI, in order to harvest, which is actually mining peat moss, they have to kill the bog because they have to drain the water out. They make canals so that all the water drains out of the wetlands, and then they take the trucks in there and they mine out the big chunks. And anyway, so I just have the question, which I'm interested in exploring: can sphagnum moss be grown in greenhouses? Because actually, a lot of people are growing sphagnum in smaller quantities for their carnivorous plants and so forth. So that's something I'm going to experiment with. So, and then this brings me to some experiments I've been doing. I've done a bunch of fiber arts, like felting. And so I have a closet full of supplies. And one day I was looking at my plants and I'm like, ding, 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 ding. What about sheep's wool, please? Instead of sphagnum moss. So I started experimenting with that back in September last year. And actually dyed the wool. I had a big box of raw sheep's wool, fleece. And I washed it to get the grease off of it, and actually dyed it with fiber dyes, permanent ones, sort of greens and browns, so it looks like moss. It looks nice. And actually, this is a Neokinesia. It's been doing great. It's totally prospering with this method. It has similarities to sphagnum in that, you know, it holds water for a time and then it dries quite quickly. In fact, it dries a little quicker than sphagnum, and I actually really like that because sometimes sphagnum stays soggy and cold for a long time. Whereas The wool fleece, I left it pretty fluffy. It's airy, so it gets aeration around the roots. So anyway, I'm gonna be looking for sources of that, like California sheep's wool, as an option instead of sphagnum moss. So, what?
How long does it last before it rots?
A few years, actually. So, hair and wool, I mean, if you bury them in the ground so that they're in touch with soil organisms and wet all the time, they will rot faster, obviously. But in a situation where they're constantly drying out and exposed to the air, it'll take a long time for this to rot, actually. And then when it does break down, it releases nitrogen, which fertilizes the plants. And actually, there are other people experimenting with using like waste sheep's wool that is not good enough for the textile industry. They use it agriculturally as a mulch or even as a fertilizer. So anyway, I think it's a promising area. And then I also found these hair mats. I don't have a picture or example of that tonight, but which actually are made in San Francisco. And they are made from human hair that's donated, plus all different kinds of animal hair. And what they do is they have people who lay it out in layers and run it through needle felting machines that are like really fast and mat it together. We have different thicknesses of it and stuff. So that's also something I've been experimenting with, and it shows a lot of promise as well. Even though that stuff is, I think, better for moisture-loving plants.
What's it commercially made for?
Actually, it's being used for mopping up oil spills, like collecting oil and also filtering pollutants out of water drains. So apparently it's really useful for that. And certainly human hair is not going out extinct anytime soon. So that is a very sustainable, as well as all the animals, you know.
Beg your pardon?
Animals are. Okay, so how am I doing on time? I ran out of time here. All right, I'm gonna just move on to this video. So I interviewed Kristen Natoli, who is the chief nursery specialist at the San Francisco Conservatory of Flowers. And she was so kind, spent a little time with me. I hope you can understand what she's saying. Actually, I think I did subtitles for this, so, because there was a fan running in the greenhouse the whole time, so I tried to filter out the sound, but it was difficult. She's going to talk about integrated pest management and how San Francisco actually mandated that city garden areas use that, and what kind of an overview of it.
Here at the conservatory, since we are on city property, we are actually subject to an awesome ordinance called the San Francisco Integrated Pest Management Ordinance. This is probably the piece of legislation in San Francisco that I am most proud of. It was a groundbreaking piece of legislation when it came out in 1996, one of the first municipal integrated pest management ordinances, and became a model for other municipalities, other major cities. This ordinance requires us to practice integrated pest management, which means that we are thinking about how to manage, not control, but manage pests through a thoughtful process of excluding them, of using cultural practices, relying on biological control. We're looking at all those strategies first. We're monitoring, we're identifying pests, and we're establishing specific thresholds of tolerance for each of those pests. These are the building blocks of an integrated pest management program, and it is laid out in this ordinance. And our chemical application is the tool of last resort, and we are only able to use chemicals off of the approved list. Now, all of these resources are available on the internet. If you Google San Francisco Integrated Pest Management Ordinance or IPM Ordinance, you should be able to get to that website. There's some handy things there. The ordinance itself, the steps to IPM, some links to what IPM is and what it means, and also the approved list, because this list is vetted. It comes, the list is created by practitioners of IPM in the city who come together to identify the tools most needed, and then the list, the chemicals that we've requested be put on the list are vetted for toxicology. We're talking human health, environmental impact and water quality impacts. So it's kind of a good list to work off of like, hey, this is a vetted list. As a result, we do very little pesticide application here at the conservatory, and we have, I think, some pretty nice collections. You know, you walk into the conservatory and it looks like we are maintaining healthy plants with minimal chemical introduction. Part of that is because the conservatory collections are a stable ecosystem, right? They've been there for a while, plants have been there for a while, they're put in place, they stay in place, and they, the living ecosystem kind of gets into balance. We are not looking to exclude all pests. We expect that there will be some pests in the conservatory. Our thresholds generally have to do with plant health. So for instance, we might have a much lower threshold of tolerance for thrips on orchids because they can transmit virus. But there might be other pests that, you know, until they start creating a visual impact, we will tolerate. And we expect to be a model for this idea that healthy collections, we can maintain healthy collections with minimal pesticide use. We do lean heavily on biological control, which is super fun, which means we're buying in bugs effectively. We have a shipment coming next week of beneficial insects that we will release to do the work for us.
Okay, so UC California, University of California at Davis is a hub of integrated pest management, and you can get loads of information on their website to learn more about beneficial insects, predator insects. It will eat your bugs for you. No toxic chemicals needed. So I'm going to move faster because I'm going to wrap this up in maybe about 5 minutes. And save some of my material for later. But I'm just going to go into one more area. Well, this is a drawing from 1980 when I was 14. And I was taking a drawing class before that, and we were drawing flowers, and I wanted to get more interesting flowers. So I went to the library and I got photo books of orchids and started drawing them. And pretty soon I was looking through all the books and getting all the catalogs and making all the lists of all the orchids I wanted to have when I grew up. And the lists get longer and longer, and basically I got orchid delirium, right? I contracted the disease. So I think we've heard of this, right? It's where some British dude went out and found a plant in the jungle, and it was pretty, and he named it after himself and brought it home. And a bunch of other wealthy British dudes said, wow, I wish I had that plant too, or something even more rare and exotic. And so they all went out into the jungle, or they sent their orchid hunters out there to, you know, plunder the jungle, bring them all back. So basically, so the discoveries led to this orchid delirium, this frenzy of orchid and other exotic plant collecting, and which often caused devastating results to indigenous plants, animals, and people. So yeah, we know this is not sustainable to keep just taking plants from their native habitats randomly and just wantonly, right? They can't regenerate fast enough for that. So anyway, yeah, Kristen from the conservatory talks about a little bit about sourcing our orchids from ethical, you know, growers and sellers. So let's get to that part. Where is it?
During COVID in particular, I think a lot of people are aware that houseplants became absolutely a craze, and there was the industry of purchasing and collecting and sharing and tropical plants in particular went through the roof, which is awesome because it means that our people are more engaged with plants in general, and we really like to see that. However, probably Orchid Society folks are aware of this, but not all collectors are, that there is a problem with a lot of wild collecting of rare and endangered plants. And this tropical plant craze, which has increased the market and dramatically increased the value and collectability of certain plants, has driven an increase of collection in the wild. I think, this is being talked about with plant societies all over the place. So I'm really glad to see this conversation happen. So I think ethical and thoughtful collecting is the key. I'm sure I'm speaking to the choir here, but eBay's probably not the place for us to get our plants. We certainly don't at the conservatory. We try to work with vendors we know, or vendors that have good professional reputation, or who we know something about how they're growing the plants, how they're sourcing the plants. And then we will ask questions for vendors that we don't know. Questions like, how do you source the plants? Do you source your plants ethically? Do you have permits for anything you're importing? And even just by asking those questions, we put a little pressure on, right? Because we want to make sure we're modeling that ethical collection strategy.
Yeah, so the American Orchid Society just has some advice for all of us, and they're just going to read what they have on their website. Each member of the American Orchid Society can play a part in the global conservation of orchids. You can start by making sure that the species you have in your collection are well grown and not inadvertently killed by neglect or ignorance. This is amazingly simple. It is known as ex situ conservation, and it is defined as the preservation of species outside of the natural range. In other words, by growing your orchid species well, you are contributing in a real way to a conservation effort. After all, an increase in better grown species equates to more cultivated plants being available and to a lessened demand for wild collected plants. So in conclusion, even though the history of our orchid growing has some unsavory moments, and it also holds stories of curiosity and wonder. It tells of humans discovering the living world. And some of these explorers did approach it with love and respect. Many explorers in the past didn't realize or didn't care about the harm that would be caused by their actions. Neither did people realize ahead of time the problems that would be caused by plastic or pesticides or peat mining. But now that we are more aware and we have so much information at our fingertips at the speed of light, how are we going to use that awareness? How are we going to act in the world to preserve the beauty and integrity of these ecosystems that we are all part of? Can we tune into the WWWnet, the Wind and Water Weather Wisdom Channel? So maybe you've only got 2 plants, or maybe you've got 5,000 plants, but I hope that maybe something in this presentation inspired you. Or if you're doing everything already, you can feel good about it already. But anyway, I hope we can all stay optimistic and do what we can and use our creativity to come up with solutions to some of these environmental challenges.
I wanted to just thank Gloria, because she thought about this and took a stab at putting it all together, and we're our first talk, right? Essentially presenting this way, right?
Yeah. I've never given a talk on the subject before.
So,
but I've been thinking about it for a long time.
Congratulate her on doing the research and
to geek out about it and share what I've learned. It's really not. I'll have to share with you the phytoacoustic translator machine next time. Did you hear about in the New York Times that they've discovered that plants actually emit sounds?
I heard about that. I thought that was the silliest study ever.
No, they're ultrasonic sounds actually. They're actually real sounds, and they emit sounds, distress signals that, as a result of being cut or dehydrated. So, but anyway, it's legit. It's in
right,
Cell
but
Journal.
what
But I was gonna do a little skit about that, but it's gonna wait. Next time.
Any questions for Gloria?
Okay.
What is
Should we do this for the next orchid event?
Oh, like,
What do you mean?
you mean at the show?
Sure.
There's some messages online, let me just see here what they're saying.
You can play now.
All right, well, let's transition then to show and tell. So before we start show and tell, I do want to plug for people in the room, there are plants of the raffle tables over here. You can buy raffle tickets over by, oh, Joe. Okay, you can back here. We'll do that at the very end for those that are new. So in the meantime, we're going to switch to show and tell, which, Kay, you're leading, right? Let me get your slides up. And thanks everyone for being patient as we get through all the technical stuff here. Super. Okay. And then that's the stage. Okay.
Okay, if you can cut some of the light so that
Sure.
color's a little better on screen. I need.
Is that better?
I need a little bit here. Okay, it's all right, I can see it, okay. This is Susan Anderson's Tolumnia mitis willow pond, which got an award of merit from the AOS. Tolumnias, if you listen to Carol Klanowski's talk, you know all about them already. But it's a small species, small genus of about 27 species. They're epiphytic, lithotrophic, and a few terrestrial ones. They are native to the south of Florida and into the Caribbean. They mostly don't have pseudobulbs, or they're very, very truncated pseudobulbs, and they have a nice fan-shaped leaf pattern. Susan also shows us her Vanden Christiansonianum. This is a relatively newly discovered species from Vietnam. There are about a little more than 70 bandus, and they're epiphytic and lithotrophic from Southeast Asia. Monopodial, which means they keep growing up. They don't send out shoots and grow a new pseudobulb on the side. Here's Lisa Perla's Masdevallia tovarensis. This is an unusual Masdevallia in that it always has two flowers on the end of one stalk like that. It's from Venezuela, mostly in the Andes part of Venezuela. It's from there. All of the Masdevallias are South American. There's about 600 of Masdevallia species. Here's Tyler Albrecht's Dendrobium star king Irvine crossed with itself. It's one of the very hardy Australian dendrobiums. It's mostly, well, it's a complex hybrid of the 3 species which we know best, which are Kingianum, Tetragonum, and Speciosum. So it can grow cool to warm, and it's a nice hardy plant. Here's Tyler's Odontocidium kojak, Golden Gate. It's another complex hybrid of almost all different Oncidium genus. It's a cool grower and it likes to have dappled light. Here's Tyler's Lycastus Shoalhaven. It's just a gorgeous white flower. It's a primary hybrid with Virginalis and Culena. Virginalis is called the white nun. It's the national flower of Guatemala. There's Tyler's Paphiopedilum Norito Hasagawa, which is mostly Armeniacum. It's a primary hybrid with Malacoense from southwest China. And here's his Paphiopedilum venustum. It's a first bloom Sealy, which is to be applauded. The venustum means lovely or charming, and I know that's somewhat controversial. Some people don't like those. It grows on the southern slopes of the Himalayas and can grow cool to warm. Here's Jeff's Dendrobium amethystoglassa, which means amethyst, colored lip. As you can see, the spot in the lip there is purple. It's from the northwest Philippine island of Luzon, and it grows on limestone cliffs there in warm weather. Here's Jeff's Darwinara Charm Blue Pacific, crossed with Vanda Santa Barbara Fizz. So this is a complex Vanda, mostly Vandas in its background with one Rhynchostylus celestis, which I think is where it gets that gorgeous blue color from. It can grow cool to warm. This is Jeff's Pleurophthalus octavioi. There are about 500 species of 500 species of Pleurophthalus. They're mostly epiphytic, but also lithotrophic and terrestrial, and they're New World species. Most of the Pleurophthalus grow the flowers from the leaf axil right at the joint there. Here's his Lepanthes marthae. Lepanthes means scale flower, and these are from South Florida on into South America. They like it warm and humid. Here's Phyllis Dietz, shows us her Dendrobium languiforme, which means tongue-like. The languiforme means tongue-like, as you can see from the leaves there. This is another one of the very hardy Australian dendrobiums. Can grow cool to warm. And here's Dave Herminer's Dendrobium exdelicatum. This is a natural hybrid between Dendrobium kingianum and Tarberry, another one of the Australian dendrobiums that are very hardy. They grow mostly on rock cliff faces, although I think they will grow almost anywhere. Next is Dave's Dendrobium linguiforme, which is blooming like crazy. And I'm jealous. I have, I think, 3 of these, and none of mine are blooming, so I don't know what that's about. Well, it's been so cold, I think a lot of stuff is delayed. Mine are outside. Here's Dave's Ludicea discolor, which the discolor means differently colored, not badly colored. It's a terrestrial and grown mostly for its beautiful velvety leaves. Judy Zhu shows us her Phalaenopsis, Zhao's pink girl, the Little Miss variety. Phalaenopsis means looking like a moth. Orchid, this is a very complex hybrid. Would like to grow shady and pretty warm. Roberta Fox sends her Sarcoglottis skeptrotes. Sarcoglottis means fleshy tongue, and skeptodes means like a scepter. So someone thought some piece of that looked like a scepter. It's a warm grower from Central America. Roberta sends us another of her Ophrys. This one is Speculum. Speculum means mirror, and it's named after that really shiny part on its lip there. And as she explains, these are commonly known as the bee orchids because they look so much like a bee, and that is their method of pollination, by luring a bee in, thinking it has a mate there. Roberta, as this is another terrestrial, the Caladinia harlequin is a primary hybrid, one of the southwest Australian terrestrials. Would like to grow bright and cool. Sean Meehan shows us just how hardy Dendrobium kingianum can be, as it's taking over his back deck, it looks like here. So again, it's from Eastern Australia, and they like to be in full sun, cold, too warm. They're not fussy about that. Here's Sean's Masdevallia hybrid. We don't have a particular name for it. It certainly looks like it has a fair amount of Vechiana in it, which is the one that grows by Machu Picchu in Peru. It's a cool grower. There are about 600 species of Masdevallias, and they, for the most part, do not want to be very warm. Here's Jan Anderson's Ananthlea magic wand. Which is it's a complex hybrid again, but mostly of Cattleyas. It's crossed with the trick or treat, which has that orange color to it. Here's Jan's Jumilia sagittata. which is now Arachnantha. It's from the Comoros Islands, and the sagittata means arrow-shaped. And brilliant color here, Elsie Fire Dance. Patricia has an award of merit from the AOS. This also is now a Catleantha rather than an LC, which is a Goriantha and Aurantiaca mostly. Here's Jan's Maxillaria tenuifolia. There are about 700 species of Maxillaria, and a while back somebody tried to divide them up into different, gave them different names to different sections, but that doesn't seem like that stuck. The tenuifolia means delicately leaved, and this is another New World orchid. Irene Landley sends us a picture of her cymbidium, which looks like it's growing outside there. Lovely color. She doesn't have a name for it, so if anyone does know its particular name, she might like to know that. And I had to ask that the turtle is not real. So I do want to say that I'm perfectly happy to do Pet Parade, and we haven't gotten any submissions. So I would encourage you to do that. Here's Patty Bowes. I hope I'm pronouncing your name properly. Bulbophyllum falcatum. Bulbophyllum means bulby leaf, and falcatum is sickle-shaped. So you can certainly see the sickle in the rachis there with the little yellow flowers. Here's her Stanhope embryoi, which she says she took lots of pictures of it because it kept changing, and they are one of the most strangely shaped orchids we have. Very complex. This one is from Western Ecuador. It likes the wet mountain cloud forest atmosphere there. This is my Silogene cristata, the alba form of that. This is from northern India on into Thailand. The cristata means with a comb, of all things. Interestingly enough, the regular cristata has the yellow inside the lip. This alba form that is pure white, as you can see, has a fragrance that smells just like cat urine. Okay, this is my Sophroninus cernua. Sophroninus means modest, and their Sophroninus are from Brazil and have been absorbed into the Cattleya group now. The cernua part means nodding, and I'm not quite sure why they would name it that. And then the last one is my Papilionantha vandarum. Papilionantha means butterfly flower, and the vandarum means vanda-like. This is another one from northeast India on into Burma, and it can grow cool to warm. I'm growing it intermediate in a greenhouse. So that's our virtual show and tell.
Do the ones up here.
Thank you.
What's the name?
You do your phone thing again? Well, why don't I get my phone with you? So
I'll walk them over.
So we need to pin that, so we can see what we have, we need to stop showing. Pin our local room.
I don't know why it's blurring the.
Says you've got it set to do a, you set it up to do a blurred background.
Oh, I see. Ta-da. All right, okay, so let's do two things. So the cameras are done. Oh, you manually, yeah.
I'm manually moving it to.
There it is.
It's got a little lag in it. Give you one. Square it. Be nice. Be nice. Nice.
There it is.
All right, this is Leptodes bicolor. Let's see. Jan and Fred. It's the Jan and Fred show.
Yeah, that's it, right there.
Thank you guys for all you do. All right. You got see them, Donna Y.
Hard to see. Just the colors of the
Oh, my God.
Like, where did we go? Oh, wait.
It's an intelligence test, right?
There you go. That works.
All right, move on. Anyone else want to be Vanna over here? I'll leave the names. Okay, this is.
Came from Kay, so she knows
I was
it.
wondering why my name is on it. This is Nadima Boothby.
Okay, you need to put it in front of the camera so people at home can see it.
Where's?
Behind you.
You're good, you're good.
Hold it up a little bit.
Oh.
There you go.
Go closer, closer, closer.
Okay.
Too cold.
It's fine.
I know who not to listen to.
This is Mitch's SLC Shinbu
Shinbu Lady Yit.
Kit Yit.
There. Okay. Looks like
This is Mitch's Oncidium.
maculatum, that 70s.
That 70s. Like that 70s show.
Okay. So it's a species Oncidium.
It's the female, so that I think the focus doesn't.
Oh, here's a really dark form of Dendrobium kingianum from Mitch. Wow, that's really intense color on that.
You hold it up a little higher.
There you
I thought I had it.
It's left, right, backwards. That's how I was.
Yeah, this is from Mitch. And oh, it's an Odontocidium, Prince Posey, also from Mitch. I got it Mm. Nicely grown. Oh, this is in circle.
This is from Janet Fred, this is, right?
Top.
Top heavy.
You broke it.
It's double potted.
Dendrobium fimbriatum.
Yeah, then this is Dendrobium fimbriatum variety oculatum. It's a species from India. There. That nice dark little spot in the fringy lip where there's a this is my Docrelia striolata. It's, I think, named after the little stripes in the flowers. I looked at the tag, and I've had this plant 20 years. It's been growing on my back deck.
Wow. Here, it's trick or treat. We were talking about trick or treat.
Oh, this is
Another
trick or treat.
another
It is trick or treat.
hybrid.
Yeah. Trick or treat, Orange Beauty has an cross with BLC Laughing Boy, SBO, both of which have award and merit from the AOS. And this is from Vince Petro Martin.
That one's mine. I got it out of raffle a few years ago.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, and it's a volunteer moss, if anybody can identify it, I'm curious.
I thought it was a bonsai.
Oh, no, well.
You got it here?
Yeah, I mean, I mounted it and then moss brought it
I didn't think you'd
myself.
been coming that long. This is Gloria's Astrocentrum aurantiacum, the little orange flowers, and volunteer moss. Very nice.
Yeah, I said it was a volunteer. Looks like you did it on purpose.
Okay. Brianna Croce, is that the way you say it?
Yeah.
Okay. I get confused with the CCH thing
I
in
know.
Italian. Has a little tray here of 3 nice orchids. This one's Phragmipedium piercii from Ecuador. You can see that. Got one flower and a bud coming behind it with the nice tails.
I have read that's the smallest of the Phragmipediums,
Is it?
the Piercii, yeah, I think so, unless they found something new.
Could be. Here's her Pleurothallus rostrostissima. Very, very dark flowers. Can you?
So,
Not going to be able to see them very well. And the Bulbophyllum grandiflorum with its oddly shaped flowers and the jiggly lip like they all have. Okay, and Bill Weaver brought us some plants. I know, I was amazed. This is Sophrolalia cinnamon sparkler. This is a Kingianum. It's Yandi Red by Kennedy. Did you do the hybridizing, Bill? This is also a dark color for that. And this one is cinnabar. Look at the flowers on that, that's great. So full.
These usually fragrant.
Some are, some aren't. I found an object to it.
Okay, I think, did I skip anything? Does anybody else have any?
Thank you, Kay. Thank you,
Benefit.
All right, so I think that concludes the online portion. So we're gonna stop the Zoom recording. And the next, for those that tuned in late, there's no board or show committee meeting in April. So the next meeting will be the May 2nd meeting where we have elections. Bye, everyone.